What's up, Ghosts and Ghouls? It's the one, the only, JT Ripper, and I'm here with
Todd of Thunder.
And you're listening to a horrible podcast. And today, we're going to be reviewing The Nun 2.
Yep, brand new movie just came out in theaters. The Nun 2, of course, the sequel to The Nun.
The Nun.
And, this is a sequel. We're going to, well, first of all, let's give you a little backstory about what this movie is. In the very small window, and we'll go into details when we get to the positives, negatives, and all that stuff, okay? So you got Taissa Farmiga returning as Sister Irene from the first film. You have Jonas, I can't say his last name, I'm going to butcher it, but he plays Maurice. He returns for this film, and Bonnie Aarons, who plays the demon nun, or Valkyr, or however you say that name. Those are the only three pretty much originals from the first film that return to this film. And, there's some new characters. The two most significant new characters are Storm Reed, who plays Sister Deborah, and a little girl by the name of Caitlin Rose Down, Downe, which is down, but it's got a V at the end, so Downv?
Downv?
Anyway, she plays Sophia.
Yeah.
Anyway,
she did pretty good.
Basically, making a long story short, we pick up 4 years after the events of the first film, which took place in 1952. This takes place in 1956. So Sister Irene is off doing her nun thing with a bunch of other nuns. And basically what happens is that the demon nun comes back and basically goes on a killing spree across France. And basically the high priest, since Irene has experience, wants to send her to track it down.
I call her Phallus.
Yeah, well.
That's how I feel about this.
Sends her to go track it down and everything. And she asks, what about Father Burke, who was basically the main character in the first film, and the high priest is like, oh, he's dead.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he's really dead or if he just said that just to
maybe they couldn't get him back. I don't know.
Get her to go in the film or whatever. But she's in Romania, so she has to take a train and go to France because that's where this killing spree is happening. And she's also informed that Maurice, who was kind of like the sidekick in the first film, he's now possessed, and the demon is using his body to basically carry off these brutal murders and everything else. So she's got to find him and got to find, all this. And she's on the train, and Sister Deborah, which is a brand new character, you get a very brief backstory with her. She just pops up on the train. She's like, I'm going with you. That's basically it. And they head off to France to look for the demon nun, more specifically Maurice.
Yeah.
And he's working as like a groundskeeper thing at like this boarding school. And that's where we meet that little girl who I mentioned earlier, Sophia. She's one of the daughters of the nuns that teach there and everything else.
Yeah.
So that in a very small window is basically what this movie is. And, of course, at the end, they have a big showdown, blah, 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 blah. So now we get to the details of the movie, like the actual positives and the negatives of the movie. And I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to start off with the positives because there's way too few positives. So I'm going to just go ahead and get it out of the way. Well, one very small detail in this film that I liked is the setting, the scenery. It does take place in multiple things. It's a little bit different than the first Nun, which basically takes place at one sanctuary in Romania. This one, we're in Romania, we're in France, we're a bunch of different places. So that was kind of a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, I enjoyed the fact that they didn't keep it isolated, because the first one just felt like you wanted them to expand more. You knew that you could expand more. And with this one, it was a nice change of pace in different places and everything like that. One positive I want to point out is the girl that played Deborah. What is her name? Storm Reed. She's the same little girl that played in The Last of Us this year. She was also in the movie Missing, about the little girl's parents that goes missing, of course. She's actually she's pretty cool.
She was in the Suicide Squad.
Was she?
Yeah, and she also had, we don't like this movie, but her credits also include The Invisible Man as well. So she's only 20 years old and she's experienced.
The little black girl?
Yeah.
She was an Invisible Man?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'd have to go back and
because I hate that movie so much. I try to forget everything about that movie. But yeah, no, she's pretty cool. I'm missing another movie she was in that I can't think of right now that came out this year. Anyway, she's pretty cool. I'm glad to see her kind of sticking with the horror genre. Hopefully, she keeps it going. I mean, she's got some pretty decent momentum under her tracks, but I enjoyed her character.
Yeah, and like you said, Taissa Formiga returning, she was, as far as her character and her acting goes, she did exactly what the script said. No complaints about her.
Yeah.
As far as like what she did, she kind of has, that innocent face where she's very vulnerable, but she can. You could tell that. If they get this franchise back on track, man, she could be a franchise
character.
Actor.
Yeah. No, that's the thing that I hate about The Nun is I feel like they've got very good actors and actresses, but the scripts and the movie just fucking fall flat like a plate full of piss. I mean,
we'll get to that. We'll rip that apart.
Okay. We're talking about positives.
Yeah.
Woosa.
Yeah, a few decent jump scares, but we'll get into the negatives of that later.
Well, my positive and negative is the jump scares. The jump scares were pretty well done, but it's also a negative because that's all it was. It was 90% jump scares.
Well, like I said, it was a few good ones. That's why I said a few.
A few.
Very few death scenes in this, but, some of them were pretty good. Setting the priest on fire was cool. The neck break was cool. That was pretty much it. I
like the priest being burned. That was cool.
And the last positive thing I'd like to say is the post-credit scene with Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson at the end. That was pretty cool.
I think it's setting up for the next Conjuring coming out.
Probably something in that universe. They're all connected in some way. But.
Well, there's another one. There's another Conjuring movie coming out. So,
but to get to the very negatives, right off the bat,
Christ, where do we start?
You already mentioned it. The jump scares was cool, but it became repetitive.
It was the whole fucking movie.
It became very repetitive, and there was no difference between. It was always somebody going into a dark room, walking very slow, hearing a noise, and then boom. That was literally every single one, and it was so fucking repetitive that it was that
jump scare where like they look in a room, and then they turn around, and then they come back, and then they come back, and then boom, something grabs them.
Yeah, it's kind of like the same shit over and over, and it's just repetitive to the point of nausea. And again, It was slow pacing. I mean, the first film was an origin story. It was built up. It was expected to be slow pacing and tell the story. We already knew what the deal was with this. We didn't need that. And a lot of that slow pacing was because of these repetitive scenes where people just walked into a room, heard a noise, it was dark, and then boom, and it was like, we know what's coming. It's like, after the first two, you're like, it's just not effective anymore.
After I rewatched The Nun here recently, because I knew we was going to have to go to the theaters to review this thing, I actually enjoyed The Nun, rewatch. I don't know why. Well, it was actually pretty fucking entertaining. I don't know why. The first time I fucking hated it, but then the rewatch, it was like, I actually kind of dug it.
Yeah.
But this one, no. This one, I feel like I'm not going to like this on a rewatch.
Yeah, and like I just mentioned, very dark as well. Very dark scenes to the point of...
like AVP Requiem, dark.
Yeah, not that far, but pretty fucking close, man. It almost became eye-rolling when somebody walked into a room and you can't see anything. It's like, God damn, here we go again. Goes back to that repetitiveness. And, to the new characters that were introduced into this film, it was very, no background or very few background. We talked about Sister Deborah. There was a very brief scene.
A minute.
Where
maybe
she is a little backstory. You see her with a cigarette. You think, oh, she might be the badass or something, or the rebel. She's still not quite on board with this whole Catholic Church. I need to pray and blah, blah, blah and all this shit.
Which could have been a cool fucking arc.
Yeah, but they never mention it ever again.
No.
And she doesn't.
Because she was there because she was forced to come there.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there's, and not only that, but the rest of the new characters, there was either no background or very few. It was, I don't know. Which leads me to my next one. This movie offered nothing new.
Nothing.
In the Conjuring universe, in the Nun saga, whatever you want to call it, nothing new. The only thing new was, I guess, the possession of Maurice, which,
was unnecessary.
It was unnecessary. It didn't make no sense.
Yeah, it feels like it was such a slow buildup and a slow burn, and then all of a sudden it was boom, 100 miles an hour, and nothing made sense. Throwing a bunch of shit at you all at once, and you're like, what? What? Hey,
yeah.
What? Why? Why do you... No.
And once they revealed that, he was possessed or whatever, in my opinion, it took away from the possibility of, the actual nun doing... The nun is actually, if you look at it, it's fucking terrifying looking. It's actually scary. And they did not capitalize on the nun at all. Once you found out that Maurice was the one that was possessed or whatnot, it was very few nun scenes. And if it was those silly-ass jump scares. That was it. The nun is, like I said, it's legitimately terrifying. You don't need a